What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Tyler. Today, they released the patch notes for 1.19. That's the big patch coming out when Season 5 launches a week from today on February 15th. So today I'm here to read over some of the patch notes, mostly just the character reworks. We're not going to read all the patch notes. I will put a link in the description to the full notes. A lot of it's the stuff we basically already know regarding the gear refinement, the faction war changes, the reputation cap increasing, stuff like that. I'm going to be going over the patch notes regarding to the character reworks. I hope y'all enjoy the video or find it helpful. If you do, a like rating would be much appreciated. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. The fighter reworks, the part we're probably all most excited about. The Kensei in his top heavy finisher cancel. The top heavy finisher cancels the side attack now happen 200 milliseconds later. Also, all light finishers now have uninterruptible stance. Cancel to dodge now only happens at the same timing as the side cancels and feint timing. Can now be canceled into a guard break. Top heavy finisher has a new animation. They changed up the animation. You can cancel into guard break, which that's awesome. They made the cancel to the side attack 200 milliseconds later into the unblockable, which is going to make it harder for your opponent to read whether you're going through with the unblockable or you're canceling it into a side attack. Alright, so now all three top heavies in the chain can now be canceled into a side attack. Okay, first top heavy can now be canceled into first side attacks, dodge, and the new melee move, pommel strike. The second top heavy can now be canceled into the second side attack, dodge, and guard break. Some timing changes. The first top heavy strike is now 1000 milliseconds. It was 700 milliseconds. Same thing for the second top heavy strike. It's now 1000 milliseconds. It was 700. First side light, when canceled from first top heavy, has a strike of 500 milliseconds. The regular first light strike from idle are still 600 milliseconds. Doing a top heavy cancel into side light is actually faster than just a regular side light. Second side light, when canceled from second top heavy, has a 500 millisecond. The regular second light strike is still 600 millisecond. Okay, so the same goes for the second strike. The third light strikes are now 500 milliseconds. They were 600 on top and 700 on the side. Also got some priority changes for the Kensei. For the recoveries of light attacks, switch the input priority so that it checks for heavy input first. This means it should be slightly easier to perform a heavy into light cancel than it would have been before when it looked for the light input first. So you won't accidentally do a light attack when you're trying to do a heavy cancel into light attack. Dodge cancels can now only be performed while Kensei has stamina. Quite a few changes to the amount of damage from the Kensei's attacks. The first side light does 12 damage, it used to do 20. The second side light does 16, it used to do 20. The third side light does 20, and it used to do 25. And as far as the heavies, the first top heavy is now 40 damage, it was 30. The second top heavy is now 40, it was 20 damage. The Kensei is getting an unblockable move. It's called Pommel Strike. The first top heavy can be canceled into the Pommel Strike. Kensei mains breathe easy. You're finally getting an unblockable move. Woo woo. Kensei's also getting 4 combo chains added to it. The first one being heavy, light, light. The second one being heavy, light, heavy. The third one being heavy, heavy, light. And the fourth one being light, heavy, light. Remember that light finishers gain uninterruptible stance and are faster than they were. So there should be situations in which these are a good option. They're the same attacks as before, they're not new moves, they're just new branchings of the attack that they already have. More for the Kensei reactions to blocks and heavy hits. The first top heavy now causes heavy hit block reaction, it was medium. The second heavy in the chain from any direction now causes heavy hit block reaction, was medium, so it takes them longer to recover. Swift Strike now causes heavy hit block reaction, was medium. Swift Strike is now performed with the heavy input button. Swift Strike is now considered a heavy attack, allows executions, costs 12 stamina, and now it's a heavy parry penalty. The move Helm Splitter is now considered a light attack again, and it's interrupted when it's blocked. The Helm Splitter damage is reduced to 17, it was 20. Kensei's got a new move called Nature's Wrath. It's performed by pressing dodge forward into heavy. It's visualized as an overhead strike using the old top heavy finisher animation. The attack is blockable. It's an 800 millisecond attack, it does 20 damage. Also, huge forward movement. The move is meant to catch opponents who attempt to roll away from the top heavy unblockable mix-up. The attack is much slower than the Helm Splitter, so it being uninterrupted on block should not be overly punishing in group fights. Some changes to dodge. Forward dodge's superior block phase now starts from 100 milliseconds to the end of the dodge, and now is always in the top stance. Right dodge's superior block phase now starts from 100 milliseconds to the end of the dodge, and now is always in the right stance. Left dodge's superior block phase now starts from 100 milliseconds to the end of the dodge, and now is always in left stance. At the end of your dodge, you keep the stance you were forced into by dodge. Backward dodge still keeps you in your stance in the direction it was for the whole dodge. You can perform your dodge attacks after superior blocking an attack, even if it's late in the dodge. Helm Splitter can now only be launched starting at 100 milliseconds, was starting at 300 milliseconds. Grasping Pounce now can only be launched starting at 100 milliseconds, was starting at 0 milliseconds. Before, the Kensei could get a superior block while dodging, but it was extremely hard to perform because it meant they had to spend time to stance change to the correct stance and then dodge. This change is meant to make this much easier to perform. Also, some changes for the zone attack. The zone attack has been reworked into a 3-strike attack. The first attack is 500 milliseconds from left stance, hitting your locked target, then flows into a similar version of the old zone attack for the second and third strikes. Unfortunately, the zone attack no longer has uninterruptible stance. The Kensei zone struggled to find a role before. It was too slow and weak to be good in a duel, and the weird hit areas and timings made it extremely difficult to use effectively in group fights. For the rushing sweep, they removed the bump after the strike. A bug fix, throwing an opponent into another opponent now causes the same bump reaction as any other hero's throws do. That's it for the Kensei. Next is the Conqueror. Woo woo. Alright, so for the Conqueror, charge heavies are now unblockable. Now there's no different levels of the charge, it's either charged or not charged. And when it's charged, it's unblockable. Fully charging the attack takes 900 milliseconds. The top heavy unblockable is 800 milliseconds and does 44 damage. The side heavy unblockable is 700 milliseconds and that does 33 damage. The stance change while charging is now 100 milliseconds. It was 300 milliseconds. So now you should be able to guard a lot easier while you're charging up that heavy. The Conqueror can no longer launch a light attack while charging. He has immunity to guard break starting at 100 milliseconds into the strike. So they can't guard break you when you throw the heavy, as long as they don't catch you in that first 100 milliseconds. Superior block has been reworked. The Conqueror no longer has passive superior block. It has been replaced with the same regular block properties as the rest of the roster. The Conqueror retains superior block on heavy openers, fully charged heavy openers, front and side dodges, full block stance. Conqueror gets a new move called Shield Uppercut. All heavies can now be cancelled into this new move. The Shield Uppercut is 800 millisecond attack. It's unblockable. It does 10 stamina damage. It has immunity to guard break starting at 100 milliseconds into the attack. The Shield Uppercut can do damage if you got the Shield Basher feat active. Hit recovery is 700 milliseconds. We've also got some changes to the Conqueror's chains. Lights can now be followed with any light, heavy, or Shield Bash mix-up. Heavy can be followed with any light, heavy, or Shield Bash mix-up. A Shield Bash can be followed with any light or heavy. We've got some changes to the light attacks. The Conqueror's light attacks have been sped up and made to do more damage. The top basic light attack is now 500 milliseconds. It was 600. Light infinite strike chain is now 500 milliseconds. It was 600. Also, all light attacks now do 15 damage when they did do 12. So that is awesome. The damage buff for the Conqueror's light attacks are greatly needed. Remove full block stance cancel from all light attacks. So basically you can't feint light attacks with the full block anymore. Okay, now we've got some offensive opportunities from the full block stance. When successfully blocking an attack from full block stance, Conqueror can now connect to new move called Flail Uppercut. Conqueror can no longer shield bash riposte, dodge, or basic attack during full block stance, or full block stance exit. Conqueror can zone attack from full block stance. Full block stance defense is now considered superior when it was regular. Full block stance entry is now 300 milliseconds from 200 milliseconds, so they made it a little bit slower to get into full block stance. But they sped out how long it takes you to get out of full block stance. It was 400 milliseconds, now it's 200 milliseconds. The stamina cost for entering full block stance has increased to 20 stamina, which you may think, that's ridiculous. His stamina game is already horrible, but check this out. The stamina regen cooldown after full block stance has been removed completely. Before, when you would do a full block, your stamina would not increase at all for 4 seconds. Now that it's been removed, so as soon as you finish the full block, your stamina should start to recover. Stamina cost for blocking an attack from full block stance has been made 0. No longer regen stamina during these blocks, and Conqueror no longer is unbalanced when blocking and going out of stamina. And about that new move we recently mentioned, Flail Uppercut, it's going to be replacing Shield Bash Riposte. It's a 500 millisecond attack. The Shield Bash Riposte was 800 milliseconds. Use the heavy input. Does 30 damage, and it can execute people if you finish them with it. We've also got some changes to the Shield Bash mix-up. After a hit, branching to light attack is now 400 milliseconds. It was at 0 milliseconds. After a hit, branching to heavy attack and full block stance are now 400 milliseconds. They were at 300 milliseconds. Shield Bash mix-up is slightly better at tracking opponents who dodge sideways. The hit area is also reduced horizontally. Shield Bash has now been nerfed to do 10 stamina damage when it used to do 20. Immune to guard break property now starts at 100 milliseconds. Hit recovery is 700 milliseconds. It was 800. The miss recovery is now 700 milliseconds from 600. After the Shield Bash mix-up, you're still guaranteed the light attack, but no longer guaranteed the heavy attack unless you hit them into a wall. Alright, so changes to the charging Shield Crush. The hit recovery is now 300 milliseconds longer. The hit recovery no longer forces Conqueror into an out of lock. The hit area is reduced horizontally. Charging Shield Crush now does 10 stamina damage. Before it didn't do any stamina damage. Charging Shield Crush now moves the opponent half a meter further backwards. Before the patch, after the Charging Shield Crush, the Conqueror was able to hit the opponent, but because the opponent was in the Get Up animation, the opponent doesn't react to the hit, so the opponent could get a free guard break on the Conqueror. Now the Conqueror doesn't get any guaranteed damage. The opponents are going to be up in time to block. The developers want the move to be something you use more in a group fight, not really something you use in duels. Some damage profile changes. The top heavy now does 33 damage. It was 25. For the zone attack, when activated from a full block stance, we removed a 100 millisecond gap on startup where the Conqueror had no defense. The Conqueror can now be parried on a second or later hit of the zone attack, and the Conqueror is no longer interrupted by blocking a minion strike. Alright, so some changes for the Berserker. Light opener and heavy openers now gain uninterruptible stance if used immediately after a feint. Side light openers are now 400 milliseconds if used immediately after a feint. Top light opener is now 500 milliseconds if used immediately after a feint. Light openers damage reduced to 15 from 17. At high level, Berserker needs to mix feints into the chains, but feinting means the Berserker would lose the uninterruptible stance benefit and often end up taking a hit. Now, if you attack immediately after feinting, your basic light and basic heavy will have uninterruptible stance. This should allow the Berserker more opportunity to trade in mid-chains if the opponent misreads and allows him to continue applying pressure. Also got some changes to the heavy finisher. His third side heavy finishers are now unblockable. They also do 45 damage. They used to do 30. The second top heavy finisher is now unblockable. It now does 30 damage and it used to do 55. Dance of the Paired Blades. The infinite light attacks from second strike onward duration are now 400 milliseconds from previously 500 milliseconds. Infinite light attacks from second strike onward now do 15 damage from 12. Infinite heavy attacks from second strike onward now do 25 damage from 20. The devs said we want these lights to be hard to block since blocking one ends the chain and it's currently too easy. Speeding this up will make it tougher and give a bit more contrast between choosing a light or heavy. Note that this speed increase or damage buff does not apply to the chain openers, just to attacks once the chain begins. For the Bear Mauler, second heavy attack now does 35 damage, previously 20. The Head Slicer now has uninterruptible stance starting at 100 milliseconds. Previously, the uninterruptible stance started at 300 milliseconds. Head Slicer is successful when used to dodge forward and trade with an attacker, so this is meant to make that a little bit easier. For the Deflect and Brute Force, now requires the player to press the guard break button during the deflect to perform Brute Force. That's the new name for the quick guard break. If no input is pressed, the Berserker will not attempt the quick guard break. Alright, changes for the zone attack. The zone attack now moves the Berserker 1 meter further forward. Extra distance is spread across all the strikes. The 4 strike now causes a light hit reaction, previously a heavy hit reaction, and the connection to infinite light attack afterwards was made 100 milliseconds later. When zone attack is parried, Berserker will now use the shorter, heavy parried reaction. Slashing Rush is now much easier to perform. When Slashing Rush is parried, Berserker will now use the shorter, heavy parried reaction. Slashing Rush can no longer execute people. Slashing Rush now costs 65 stamina from 12. Slashing Rush no longer has extra stamina costs when missed or parried. Short range leaps now start at 3.5 meters, was previously 4 meters. Medium range leap starts at 5.8 meters, was previously 7. Long range leaps now start at 7.8 meters, was previously 9. Alright, that's it for the Berserker. On to the Highlander. He's got some major changes to the Celtic Curse. The top strike can now be cancelled into fast flow to top offensive form by holding the heavy input button. Shows the pink flash of entry into the offensive form. Slightly increase the rotation of top strike to better track sprinting opponents. Improve the ability to acquire targets that are sprinting at the Highlander. The Celtic Curse can now switch targets while cancelling into the side attack. Some stamina changes. They remove the stamina cooldown for entering offensive form. Can now regen stamina while dodging in offensive form. Also reduce the stamina cost of Balor's Might to 24, previously 30. The Highlander has been heavily limited by his stamina consumption and regeneration. Often the Highlanders will do a lot of work to only get one hit in, then have to back off. Now the Highlanders should be more able to sustain their offensive pressure. Note that while offensive form's enhanced lights still cost 3 stamina when cancelled from Balor's Might, when accessed directly, they are reduced from 33 to 27 stamina. When accessed directly, they are reduced from 33 to 27. We've also got quite a few changes to the damage profile. Increased damage on offensive form Balor's Might to 40 from previously 30. Increased damage on defensive form side heavy openers to 35 previously 25. Increased damage on defensive form side heavy finishes to 35, previously 30. Increased damage on defensive form top heavy openers to 45, previously 40. Increased damage on defensive form top heavy finisher to 45, previously 40. Changes to defensive form's second light's uninterruptible stance is now applied to the defensive form's second light starting at 100 milliseconds. Interrupt block reaction is reduced to 800 milliseconds, previously 1100. The move no longer gives up a free guard break when blocked. Furthermore, the uninterruptible stance allows it to be used occasionally in group fights. Changes to the caber toss, improved rotational tracking, improved ability to move forward during the strikes. They increase the movement on the offensive form's forward dodge by 0.25 meters. Small movement increase to help the Highlander catch up to more opponents while holding the offensive form. Changes to the Fomorian kick. They reduce the knockback distance slightly on the Fomorian kick in order to reduce the situations in which you land the kick, but with the unblockable afterwards because you kicked your opponent too far. Fix an issue where stance changes prevented Highlander from fast flowing into offensive form. That's it for the Highlander. Next up with some major balance changes is the Nobushi. To her zone attack, the first strike is reduced to 20 damage, previously 33 damage. The second strike is now 1 damage plus 20 bleed damage. It was 6 damage plus 20 bleed damage. So the total zone attack damage is reduced to 41 damage. The total zone attack damage is reduced from 41 health. The total 2-hit zone attack. The total damage for the zone attack with both hits is reduced to 41 health, previously 59. Also added visual effects on the zone attack second strike cancel. Updated the attack range to 3.5 meters on the kick from 4 meters. They reduced the invulnerability to guard break by 400 milliseconds on the miss. It was from 0 to 700 milliseconds. They've also removed the stamina cost of the kick if you actually land it to 10 stamina points. The kick trajectory has also been updated. Alright, so for attacks after the hidden stance in the top light attack startup is reduced to 500 milliseconds, previously 600 milliseconds. For the hidden stance top heavy feint, a bug fix where the defense was missing during the last 100 milliseconds of the feint is now fixed. Some more move changes. The side light finisher startup is now 600 milliseconds, previously 700 milliseconds. The swift recoil can now connect to the Viper's retreat after 200 milliseconds. Changes to the side dodge. The increase in the Nobushi side dodge recovery duration to 600 milliseconds. Before it was 500 milliseconds. The sprint light attack no longer causes opponents to be knocked off ledges, but the sprint heavy attack does. More changes for the light attacks post hidden stance. They now do 8 damage. Previously did 18 damage. That's it for the character reworks of patch 1.19. There's a lot more information in the full patch notes, which I will link below. If we made a video covering the entirety of the patch notes, that would take about 45 minutes. That's a negative, Ghost Rider. February 15th, y'all get ready to rock and roll. Hopefully we will have a date very soon for when dedicated servers will be coming to console. Remember, February 19th for you PC players. I hope y'all did enjoy the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, a like rating would be much appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome. I'm out of here. Peace.